Well, hello everyone. We really appreciate your taking the time to be here this evening. I'm Heidi Hollenbach. I am the district coordinator for the Grand Rapids District Office of the Department of Environmental Quality, and I'm also the Grand Rapids District Supervisor for Air Quality. And we are pleased to be here this evening. As most of you know, there was a permit put out for public comment that was received by the Water Resources Division for a project proposed by Melching Incorporated, and that is why we are here tonight. But we noticed in a lot of the comments that came for that permit that there seemed to be a lot of questions that maybe weren't related directly to the permit, so we thought it might be helpful to have a question and answer session to try and get information out to you. Now, we don't have all the answers, but we will do our best to share the information that we do have with you. And this is going to be an informal question and answer session from 6 to 7. And then starting at 7, we'll probably break a little bit before 7 so we can set up. But starting at 7, we'll have the public hearing. And during the public hearing, there's not an opportunity to ask questions, but you can state your comments regarding the permit application on the record, and the Water Resources Division will run that hearing. So we'll start that at 7. If you still have questions after that, if you don't have time to get through everything, we'd be willing to stay and answer more questions after the hearing. So we did hand out a question and answer sheet to try and respond to some of the comments we received, so hopefully that will help some of you. Probably a lot more questions beyond that, but we thought it was a good start. So please refer to that. Hopefully everyone got it. It looks like this. And I think we have a few more out in the hall, so if you can get one, raise your hand and we can get one for you. Everyone all set on that? Okay. Just to make sure this runs all smoothly, we're going to need your help tonight. There are a lot of you here, and we want to be able to have everyone be able to ask their questions. So we're going to ask that you limit your questions in the short time period, so we can go through them quickly. And if I think you're kind of going a little over 3 minutes, I will probably let you know that, very politely, but. So if you could then let us answer your question, and then we'll move on to the next person. That would really help. Yes?
What are the known contaminants on the former SAPI site?
Start right now.
Yeah.
I just want to introduce our staff here first, okay? And then we'll get to the questions. And we do know everyone is very passionate and concerned about this. We appreciate that fact, so we will work with you and get you answers. So thank you for starting us off, and we will get to you in 1 second. First, let me introduce the DEQ staff we have here tonight. And we have David O'Donnell, who is the district supervisor for the Remediation and Redevelopment Division. We just changed her name today. We've got Heather Hawkins. She is also with the Remediation and Redevelopment Division, and she is responsible for a lot of sites here in Muskegon County. So Heather's the one on the spot. We also have Jennifer Dixon. She is with the Air Quality Division, and she's also responsible for Muskegon County in terms of air quality issues. We have Nancy Kinkunen. She is with the Water Resources Division, and she's actually the permit writer on this Melching permit, and will be taking your testimony today. And last but not least, we have Luis Saldivia. He is the district supervisor for Water Resources Division. So he's also here to help answer questions. We also have Ann Couture here. She is the acting, you want to stand up, division chief for the Remediation and Redevelopment Districts. A lot of you probably have met Ann or seen some of her comments. And Mike Worm, Mike's hiding in the back, so I think he's handing out the question and answers, but Mike Worm is here from the Water Resources Division as well. I want to introduce Representative Marcia Hubby-Wright. Thank you for coming, and we appreciate your presence here. Any other elected officials who want to be introduced? No? Yes?
Well, first.
Thank you for being here. Yes.
Byron Turnquist, City Commissioner.
Excellent. Yes.
Leah Markowski, City Commissioner.
William Behrman, City Commissioner.
Great. Well, thank you guys for being here. That's really helpful. Okay, well with that, I think you may get the first question.
Yes. Well, hey, thanks. Really appreciate it. What are the known contaminants on the former Sappy site, and where are they exactly?
Turn that to Tell me if you can't hear me. I'm not used to speaking into a little mic like this. What we know, there were some historic releases that in the early 2000s, Sappy had some pipeline breaks. There are sodium sulfate. We've got some arsenic, selenium, silver. There's some manganese and mercury in the groundwater in the central portion of the site, meaning kind of back where the buildings are. Since that point in time, Melching has put in some monitoring wells along the shoreline, and we have not seen those contaminants criteria in those wells.
You seem, thanks for answering. You seem to be going by memory, and I'm going to be going by memory now to remember what you said. Is there a place that we can look at this for verification?
Yes, and that would be in our files at the office building. I can, let's see, we have what you can do is request, we have an opportunity where we can put our files on CDs, and so then we can mail that out to you. If you're with a group, it'd be best probably if maybe one person did that, and then you guys could share that information. But that we would go to the DEQ-FOIA@michigan.gov and request to see the file on CD.
Thank you.
All right. Yes.
I have a question in terms of no proposed dredging for this project, and what happens if the barges are bringing in scrap metals and the water continues to go down?
What we have here tonight for the permit application that we have in front of the department is for 2 platforms for loading and unloading, that sort of thing. If the company decides in the future to put together a dredging proposal, they will have to apply for a permit with the DEQ, Water Resources Division. We will put it on a public notice, more than likely, and then we'll have an opportunity to look at what the issues associated with that dredging project will be. Quantities, what's in the sediment that are going to be dredged, where will they have to be taken, that sort of thing. So we are not contemplating that tonight, but that's certainly something that the company might want to petition the department to do.
So they have to start over?
Yes, with a new application for permit and that sort of thing.
Yes.
I wanted to also add to the question that Leon had.
Okay.
That to consider. So does that mean that only in the funnels these minerals aren't found, but does that mean that it's still in the surrounding land?
What I have to say.
What was the question?
Everybody over here cannot hear. Is it
Okay.
possible to repeat the question?
Sure, I'll try my best. There were some concerns that there's tunnels and that certain contaminants may be in those tunnels.
But no, I'm saying is you said that it's pretty much clear in the tunnels, but outside surrounding.
Okay, and that would be, yeah, there's been some wells installed along the shoreline, and those wells, we haven't seen the contaminants in those wells.
But is it on outside?
What we're seeing is it being inside where the buildings are. where the buildings were.
Okay. So underneath the ground.
Right, in the groundwater, yes. And you all set?
Those of us who grew up on Muskegon Lake have seen a lot of pollution that came from the mill originally when the log booms were there and whatnot. That had to go somewhere. And most pollution ends up on the bottom. Has anybody taken any well drillings or any core samples from outside the shoreline? It can't just disappear.
Right, you're talking about in the lake itself?
Yes.
I'm not aware of any.
And just go by
I believe
memory.
That's kind of handled. There's a group in Lansing that has, they do some sediment samples. There may have been some historic samples collected in the lake.
It's not part of your DEQ?
Yes, it is part of the DEQ. I'm saying that there's a section in Lansing that deals with sediment contamination. You might have, do we have some of that in our office? The file, maybe? Instead of having that information?
Well, what we have is that there have been a number of projects on Muskegon Lake over the years. Each project, dredging or capping or whatever project, is being put together to try to address some of those historical contaminant issues. Significant amount of sediment sampling takes place. I don't have in front of me, I don't recollect if in front of the melting property a significant amount of sediment sampling has taken place, either by the DEQ or by the EPA or by anyone else.
Do you know if any has taken place, either historically or certainly more currently?
I don't have that information, ma'am. I think I recollect, because this is not part of this process that we're doing here tonight, but I'm not sure if the DEQ or sediment group sampling in Lansing did any sampling, but I thought that there was an effort, some funds from the EPA to do some strategic sampling throughout the area. That is what I have a recollection.
I think during, I've been, my co-worker that I work with in water resources division in the district is Tom Radinsky, and I know that I think there might have been some samples collected during the whole area of concern designation, that there may be some.
I'm very confused because it's not your fault. I thought when you guys were monitoring this property to looking towards a solution to this request, that your job was to find pollution and what it would be disturbing it and releasing it, re-releasing it, whatever. And now I'm getting this,
I don't know.
maybe, I don't know, years ago.
Yeah.
Has anything been done?
Good
Okay,
question.
Let's just get to that real quick. We have two. We have the 7 o'clock public hearing tonight.
Okay.
It's for the platform. No dredging is proposed.
Aren't they going out in the lake?
No,
They're not going out in the lake?
they're not going down the lake. We have, let me finish. The two docking platforms, that's where I imagine the shipping will be coming in and out. There's no dredging involved with that,
But there will be pilings put down.
yes. But there's no, in a true sense, there's no requirement to do any sampling for that part of the project.
Oh, come on.
You're going to disturb the bottom.
But I think what she's speaking to
is the need for remediation because of gas contamination and what efforts are being made in that direction in terms of the DEQ, because we've been told by our city commissioners and city planners that the DEQ is really all over that and responsible and is taking action in that direction. And I think that is what we are being told by our officials is being done. And so that's what I think the question is.
So may I speak to your question then? We have, to date, there has been some phased investigations going on the property. We're not going to be doing a large investigation because, frankly, it's too dangerous for the people doing the investigation. There's a lot of big equipment rolling around out there. And it's a 120-acre piece of property. These investigations take time. We will do the investigation in phases over time because there is a variety of activities that went on that property over 100+ years. So, speaking to your specific question about contamination in the deep sediments, because that is deep out there. Off of the Savvy property, it's probably the deepest part of the lake. We may get indications that we need to do investigations out there. Right now, we are up on the property. We are starting where we know the contamination is, and when I say we, I actually mean Melching is doing that because the state is not doing any investigation. We're overseeing the investigation. And we're overseeing the investigation that Melching is going to be doing, and we're going to be in a dialogue with Melching to make sure that all the concerns at the end of the day are taken care of. But it's not going to happen next week or next month or even next year. This is a several-year project.
Can the citizens initiate action on part of the EPA? Because I understand they've been involved in sediment sampling. And could we ask them to do that on behalf of our concerns?
The EPA has, in the most recent project that I've worked on, they've actually let the state continue with the oversight of the project because they have a lot of things on their plate too. And at this point, I don't see a reason why the DEQ can't do the oversight.
Okay. You first.
Heather, you mentioned that there were some significant spills since 2000, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, how long would we expect the water contamination to leach away from the area of the spills? Could it be that they just haven't reached the wells at the shore yet?
That is a possibility, yes.
Okay, the second question, do you have any idea what the measurement of the contamination is? I don't know if you do that in parts per million or whatever.
Yeah. For some of the metals, like the sodium, it's usually measured in what we call parts per billion. I'm sorry, parts per million. And then when we get to the metals, we look at parts per billion. So that's three steps kind of down. Micrograms per liter. Yeah, mercury is one that we take a look at, and that one is in what's called parts per trillion, or that's nanograms per liter.
Is there a report somewhere that we can get a copy of that spells out what the level of contamination is in the groundwater?
It is in one of the reports. I think that's like a 2005 report. If you want.
Well, I think this kind of goes along with what you're talking about. We understand that Melching is bringing in scrap metal from other locations outside of Muskegon, and we're wondering if there's any agency that is charged with monitoring for pollution from those metals that are brought in to the scrapyard.
Well, the DEQ does not oversee scrapyard operations, and I can't think of any department that does. Anybody?
No, anticipation would be that the operations that they're doing, which involve coarse cutting of metals for shipment, is not going to lead to significant contamination. Of course, they still have obligations to be good housekeepers with that. But no, that is not regulated by the DEQ.
The Department of Transportation do that?
I doubt that.
There's no oversight. So if the barge falls over and all this metal falls into our lake, no he's there to
Well,
know.
that part, the Coast Guard, federal agents.
People are going to be upset here.
Thank you for having this opportunity. In light of the fact that the testing that's being done is being done by Melching himself and only overseen by the DEQ rather than done by the DEQ, having been told that the DEQ doesn't have the funding, the stats, or the resources to do its own testing, and in light of the fact that the deed restrictions forbid Melching Inc. from testing in the dirty hotspots on the land, how are we to believe any of these test results? Why are we're not seeing the real stuff testing where there is no contaminants or very little? He's barred from testing dirty spots, unless I'm misunderstanding that somehow.
I think there's two questions. One question is, how is it that the DEQ is able to provide oversight given what you've heard is limited resources? And the second question is with respect to testing in the hotspots and the deed restrictions. The deed restrictions actually do not prohibit the testing on any part of the property, although it does require Melching to work with SAPI and to vet their work plans through. However, if the DEQ requests specific testing, Melching can do that. And so part of our oversight is going to be looking at those hotspots and whether or not they represent a threat and whether we think further testing needs to be done. Our oversight is not going to be just limited to, taking a table out of a report and looking at that. Heather and Matt Gamble, a very clever geologist that I have working for me, are part of the team that will be reviewing not only the data that comes in, but the quality control information that comes in with the data. Whenever you do environmental testing, there is reams of quality control data that comes in. That will help inform our ability to decide whether or not we think that the testing is adequate and accurate. You're welcome.
Lakeshore Environmental is the consultant that Melching has hired, and they send it out to a lab, I believe, in Holland. ALS,
Yeah, it knows his lab.
They don't have a telephone number?
Lakeshore Environmental? I don't have it with me, but I can get you a number. I don't have it with me right now, but
They're not listening.
they're Haven. They're based out of.
They have several assumed names. They currently have 4 assumed names: operational product services, engineering, consultant, wetland consultant, and 4 previous ones of the code in prior years. So how we want to do
That's marketing. You don't want to just be one. You've got to do everything. That's just marketing. We've worked with Lakeshore I've been here for 22 years, and I think I've worked with them starting early on in my career. So they've been around for a while. We personally know most of the people who are there.
Have you tried? I do have a number here. 616-844-5050. I gotta be good for a smartphone. Yeah, I don't have smarter than me. Yes, in the back.
Yes, do the same rules cover sampling on the Melching-owned property as they do on Muskegon Lake? Do the same rules of sampling apply?
Same rules of sampling for the 2 media.
Yes.
Does that answer your question? Is that what you're looking for? Yes.
Your site sound like shipping scrap metal was reduced 2.2 acres or less, so it would not require site plan approval by the Muskegon Planning Commission. How does this relate to Melching Inc.'s ability to proactively prevent pollution in the shipping process? And can the operations really be narrowed down that far to 2.2 acres without concentrating the contaminants imported from off-site, without creating a greater risk of the contaminated runoff into surface water?
Can't hear.
Can't hear you back here.
The question related.
Microphone.
Bring up the mic.
Like, bring this.
How about that mic up there?
The question related to
Yeah, you can come up.
the reduction if mulching can contain its operations to a certain size, and how that related to environmental contamination and mulching's ability to contain any contaminants that are associated with the metals. And I think, as I said earlier in an earlier question, we do not do oversight of their process. They have obligations to make sure that they don't contaminate the property. Of course, with us doing oversight of an eventual much larger investigation, it would be in their best interests not to do any further contamination of the property based on their processes.
Okay, in the back?
Yes, but considering that there's been no baseline environmental assessment of this property, how would anyone be able to know whether there have been additional contaminants added to the property via this chemical operation? We don't know what's there now. We don't have a baseline. Who's to say that X contaminant originated from sapping versus from mulching's operations at any point down the road? That everyone's flying blind here.
That's an excellent question. They won't be able to distinguish in many cases the difference between contamination from their operations or from Sappy's, but that's irrelevant to the fact that mulching has responsibility for everything. So if they find contamination that exceeds the criteria in our state environmental code, they're going to be responsible for offering a remediation plan to deal with it.
Yes.
For that question, how has Sappy been held accountable for the pollution of the house?
We have sent notice letters to Sappy, and mulching has responded on behalf of Sappy.
Have you accepted that?
As long as they keep doing the work.
How do we know mulching does it right?
Well, that leads back to the question about oversight.
David's on the case, so. Yes.
Thanks. What criteria are you using to create a plan for cleanup?
The criteria used in any remedial plan in the state is informed by, first, the person proposing the plan, and second, the zoning of the property. That is what the criteria will be based on. So that is the final cleanup criteria. It's premature to say whether they're going to use one or the other, although I think it's pretty safe in this case to say that they're going to be using the non-residential criteria as the basis for their cleanup.
Area residents have collected particulates that have collected on like their picnic tables and their automobiles and other parts of their homes in the immediate area. My husband was showered riding his bike through the area. People have reported having, their cars showered with particulates coming off the site during the demolition. And I live across the bay from the paper mill, and on certain nights I have to close all the windows because I can't breathe, and I'll have constricted throat and nasal congestion and coughing. And I know there's a distinct difference because I have a place in the UP and I can really breathe well up there. And I know there are a lot of contaminated sites and a lot of places that we have airborne contaminants coming out of their smokestacks. But what are the standards and criteria by which acceptable levels of airborne contaminants in particular are measured? And who's responsible for collecting those samples? In light of the fact that in Muskegon we have high rates of asthma and respiratory illness, cancer, diabetes, and renal failure, all which have associations with dirty air.
Well, number one, if you do see dust like that you think is from the melting operations that are ongoing right now, if you see Pardon?
Call you at 4 in the morning.
You can do that. We do have a number that you can call. If you really think it's an emergency, a pollution emergency, please call the PEAS line. That's for emergencies only. Like if you happen to be outside and I don't know what it could be that would be associated with them. They're typically not working at night from what I understand. But as far as I think what we're going to be experiencing as far as dust goes from that facility right now is that from the torching operations, you may see opacity, meaning smoke in the air. Please call me if you do. We also may see dust from the demolition operations if they're not running the water machine, the dust destroyer, like they're required to. We may be seeing excess dust in the area. Please call me if you do see it. Now this would be dust that would be leaving their facility and impacting your property, your use of the sidewalk, anything like that. As far as the levels go, because of the operations they're doing there right now, it really is kind of, if we're seeing something, then they shouldn't be doing it. Then they need to be taking extra care. They need to be adding more water. They need to be doing it in a different way that's minimizing that dust and smoke that's getting in the air. I have made a couple visits to the site. I've made several visits around the area. I'm in Muskegon once or twice a week, so I always try to come by here and just see what they're doing. I am watching them as much as I humanly can. But if you see an issue, you need to call me, because if you don't, then I don't know what's going on. Okay?
Your numbers are on.
Yeah, our office number, there's a question about that coming through, and our office number is in here.
What you got?
And you can ask for Jennifer, if she's not there, and we will get someone out to the site.
And they are well aware of what they are allowed to do. So if you do think it's an issue, please let me know. And I mean, this doesn't necessarily apply to melting, but we have had some where people have thought it was melting and it wasn't. And I can usually identify where it's coming from, and I do try to take care of that to the best of my ability. So if your best recourse is call the office. If it's an emergency, call the PEAS line.
Then you want samplings of
if I'm doing my due diligence and I really feel like there's an issue of contaminants coming off site like that, I will take samples. I'll put out dishes, and we do have some stuff that we can do. We are limited a little bit with the sampling that we can do in our office, from our office. But I will, if it becomes an issue that's leaving the site and we can identify that, then I will take samples.
But you haven't so far.
I have not so far, because I haven't gotten enough complaints. I'm not telling you to complain for no reason.
Just to follow up on the dust contamination, I'm about 2 miles from there. When the wind is blowing from the east, in the past when the paper mill, we used to get a lot of black spots on our boat. Different now, all of a sudden, this is just what I got off a 6-inch space on my boat that's in Pigeon Key Marina. And I've also got a small dinghy, and it's just really dark.
Only when it gets on there again, and I'll look at it for you for sure.
And I think the dust situation, we got so many marinas here, it's going to be a real detriment. He may be spraying where they're tearing it apart. There's an awful lot of dustable stuff as they drive those trucks around.
That's true, and they do have, I have required mulching to, and it's not a written plan, but they do have a dust management plan, so they do water the roadways. When I go out there, I tell them, this is not wet enough, this is not wet enough, this is not wet enough, you need to be adding water, you need to be doing it more frequently, and that is one of the things that when I go out there, I really look at. Because I don't want to drive by and see them on their bulldozers with dust going behind them. And like I said, I can't live there. I'm not there 24/7, but when I do see it, I do address it immediately with them.
So can you test for example?
No, because I did not see where they came from.
Yeah, we have to maintain chain of custody, so, but we will.
I'll still look at it, but I won't be able to, you know what I mean? It's just,
yes.
That there is not, as you say, you can't live there. And we've heard a lot of maybes and I don't knows. And I understand that you might be understaffed and all those things. I appreciate all the work you are doing. However, the impression I'm getting is that the community really needs to be the watchdog that we thought for the completion of this work. that was your sole function, to my understanding. And if you don't have the staffing or funding or time or resources to watchdog it like the community needs, and the community needs to call constantly to let you know anything we see, it sounds like it's up to us. And that you've already said the EPA's got other things they're handling. So would you say that's accurate?
Well,
I mean, for
you know,
citizens?
it's good to hear from you because you are extra eyes and ears, but these staff do spend a lot of time out in Muskegon.
Sure, I
So,
understand that.
and RD is working very hard with mulching on the plan, the investigation, and so you know, there is a lot of effort being undertaken by DEQ. But yes, extra eyes and ears are always good. So,
And in response to the chain of command, unless I misunderstood something, or not, yeah, not
chain of custody.
Custody, thank you. Did I misunderstand that there is no chain of custody with the melching tests, but there is from a citizen?
Yes, there is chain of custody
There is.
requirement.
You oversee the
Absolutely.
test, I mean,
Yes.
the actual sample being taken?
They do. They are on site.
Okay.
Well, not all the time, but the consultant is required to do chain of
I see.
custody.
Thank you
Yes.
for the clarification.
Yeah, I have 3 questions all regarding investigating inspection, the monitoring wells that are installed in the hot spot. So my first question is, sounds like the monitoring wells are along the lake shore. Are there between that and the hot spots to see if anything's moving? My second question is, you talked about investigating under phases. Can you talk a little bit about what the plan is for those phases, those plans, and what kind of a timeline you might think that those investigations would come under? How long is it going to take to really investigate this land? And then thirdly, with all the problems you're talking about on the site, how will you investigate if it's too dangerous to get to the site? So if you have something to address some of those issues so you can get to those spots that might need investigation that might be dangerous now.
Okay. I hope I got them all written down here. I might have to have you refresh me.
Okay.
But for the monitoring wells, we wanted to know what was potentially impacting the lake. That was a huge concern that I know that you have and that we have as well. So their first step was 2 pool wells in along the shoreline. It doesn't mean that's going to be the only wells we see out there. We're going to be seeing some inland more. There's going to be investigations in those hotspot areas. So I expect to see some contamination inland. We may not see it currently in those outer rim wells, but we're going to be looking at that. There's not just going to be wells along the shoreline. We're going to be seeing some. There are some interior, but it's kind of bracketing the building area where they've got their heavy equipment. Right now, it's not safe to get in there and actually put another drill rig in there with all the parts and pieces and the heavy equipment in that area. For phases, it's kind of like the phased approach I was just getting at. We want to see what could potentially be impacting the lake right now. So the first phase was to put those wells in along the shoreline. Then we'll do some backtracking. If there's a particular parcel on the property that there's some interest in, I think that's when we go over to that particular parcel and we sample it, soils, we sample the groundwater. We get those results from mulching so that we know what's in those particular areas. So that's also some other phased approach as well. Timeline that you had mentioned, if those parcels aren't being necessarily sold off right away, we want to know what's going more in the hotspots. Let's take a look at what's there, and so that will be our phased approach as well. The timeline, it's hard to say exactly. I can't say like, well, in December of this year, I should be getting a report from them regarding the wells interiorly. Part of it is that we get the results. It takes a little bit of time to review them, making sure that the QA/QC is appropriate, which is quality assurance, quality control. And at that point, when we get a chance to look at those results, we can then see, okay, well, this area on this edge looks to be a little bit hotter. Let's move it over there. So it can take a couple of months. I know that I've spent, it must be 15, 16 years up in White Lake with the tannery site. It does take time, but if you want the job done right and you want it done well, so you know what you've got, it's the time that it does take.
My last question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My last question was in terms of you have some dangerous areas. How do you address getting to those dangerous areas? If you have a plan for that?
Again, it's Melching's program, and what I would suggest is as they get the metal out of the buildings, down the ground, and ship it off the site, those areas will become open for investigation. So as soon as they can get metal off the site, which is in their best interest from a business standpoint, they're going to leave that site open for investigation.
So, kind of a related question. What would cause an investigation of the sediments to do that? I mean, what would make you suspicious of that, and what would the, I guess, bureaucratic processes be?
If we start seeing things in those monitoring wells along the GSI, that raises questions about what's going out into the lake.
But historically, I mean, you wouldn't have had monitoring wells,
right,
at the time that one suspects the great deal of pollution is happening.
Well, right now, there's certain wells along the area where the central operations have occurred. There's other wells that we're going to need to see along other portions of the site, along what we call the GSI. I'm going to use an acronym, and I'm sorry, that's Groundwater Surface Water Interface. So that's where the groundwater and the surface water tend to meet. That's what we're interested in. So there's going to need to be some wells other than just where we have them currently along the shoreline.
Okay, so 3 follow-up questions. Let's just suppose that citizens were able to engage someone to do their own testing of the sediments, and then indicated that there was something to look at there. How would that work?
We would have to draw the nexus between the contamination and the operations of the property, which may be easy, which may not be easy. But given the interest, I think it's probably something that we're going to have to do is go back and take a look at the data we have, and maybe suggest to our Water Resources Division when they're going to be doing some testing that this might be a good place to do that testing in the future, because we do have periodic requests from the Water Resources Division to my division for areas of concern as far as testing. So if we don't find the data, we can probably try to get it. I think we could get it.
Regarding MPSR or groundwater support industries, do you feel that area is adequately mapped so that you are aware of where all the groundwater is going?
Right now, we've got wells that are screened shallow, the shallow portion of the aquifer, and we've got a couple that are intermediate. But for the most part, we've seen just some shallow wells. We've requested some deeper wells out there, and just recently, like last Friday, I've gotten a report they have installed some additional wells out there. I haven't had an opportunity to take a look at it yet. I want to make sure I do a good data review and everything, but there will be not only just shallow wells along there, but because we have this kind of sloping material, I mean the shore seems to slope and it's a deeper lake bottom, we're going to need to see intervals sampled out here.
Not necessarily in regards to the sample, as to whether or not that's been a sample, but do you actually know where the groundwater travels from the staffing site outward?
Yes, we can determine that by water level elevations, groundwater elevations. And it is flowing through.
There is a ballot proposal on the ballot on the November ballot to change the zoning of this property. If that zoning change is approved, would that necessarily change the level of cleanliness that would be applied to the property?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
We have a couple back here.
Yes. You was stated that environmental quality doesn't have any baselines for any of the current pollutions. Well, how could you not have baselines? There haven't been any testing so far?
We have some results from 2005 out there.
In other words, you do have
Yes. we have
results.
some
So there are baselines. In other words, if the mercury suddenly spiked, you would realize that it wasn't there before and it came from somewhere.
Yes, in that particular.
So you do have some kind of
Yes,
data.
yes, there is some data. That was a 2005 report. There's some.
Because I'm sure that the taxpayers have spent a couple of bucks on this already.
Okay, we have about 3 minutes.
This man's had his hand up for a long time.
Yes.
I just wanted to go along with this gentleman here and the lady over there that's about the dust. I live across the street from the mill on Lakeshore Drive there. And there is a lot of that, I don't know what you call it, it's kind of a milky, grayish dust or whatever it is. But anyway, it's all over the lawn furniture, it's all over my car. I'm sure it's all over my house, the lawn furniture. And I've had, somebody mentioned, well, they only work during the daytime. It doesn't really matter. The wind blows at night too. And it blows both ways, and we get it pretty bad. I've been there for 40-some years, and people say, well, you shouldn't have bought that house. Well, this time I was here before melting was.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see, why don't they take us into consideration once in a while?
Good.
Because they say, I had a talk with a couple of guys that said they worked for them, and I got a card from them just so I can call them because I didn't know to call you, but I will be calling you probably. But they're doing whatever they're doing. It's so hard. The pictures on my wall in my house go like this. The coffee goes like this, slopping around in my pot. And the house itself, and I went over and told them, you're going to break my foundation. And Sappy has broke a few foundations in the past. Now, I don't know what these guys are doing, but I went over and asked them, I said, how about your house? Oh, he says, it isn't affecting my house. See, that's kind of like the fox watching the hen house when they're doing all the investigation and nobody else is in there to back it up. I'd like to see what's going on.
Don't regulate noise or vibrations. Maybe the city has an ordinance, but
We do have a noise ordinance.
That's a city.
Well, but we still, there's noise ordinance out there, common sense, thanks.
but call me and I will come out and look at it.
Yeah, you're welcome to come over to my house anytime. Yes.
Can you bring her? Take her. Go get her.
I'll get you the help.
Yeah. He had said 2 years, they thought. It's a process. It's a lot. The problem is with it that I see, or from what I understand, there's so much sorting that has to be done. The sorting takes a really long time, the sorting and the cutting. So in order for them to get the pieces of the building out of there, it is going to take them a lot of time. I'm sure you've seen, they can pick up one piece at a time with each front end loader, one piece, and they cut it in one piece. And so it's such a huge property and so many buildings that it is going to take a long time. Now, I heard 1 to 2 years. When I look at that, I think closer to 2 years. That is not my professional opinion. That's just my personal opinion, based on how much they have to do, previous experience with demolition sites, and what they're trying to achieve, because they are trying to recycle as much as they possibly can from the site. Whether it's cementitious material, metal, aluminum, steel, everything's being meticulously separated.
So 2 years from today, kind of, or
I think from 3 months they started. No, I think from when they
So we're a
started.
few months into that on the good side of it.
On the good side of it. I think you're going to see a lot come down, and then it's going to kind of seem like it's sitting there for a long time as they sort through everything. Okay, we'll take one more question.
Just one?
Hasn't had a chance to ask one yet. Back there in the back, I think.
Sean.
In this article, it says that they do also consider the public's right to access to the lake and recreational boating. My question is, in the wintertime, is there going to be a cutter coming in to cut the ice so they can get their barges or whatever they take to their dock, and how would that affect the ice fishing?
That is not something that the DEQ would oversee at all, so.
Ms. Shanti.
That and it impinges on our recreational boating.
Unfortunately, not an issue. Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up right now for the questions. Thank you so much for your patience and your listening and your good questions. If you want, if you have questions afterwards, we could resume. You might be tired after that, but and there will be future meetings too. This is not a one-time appearance by DEQ. We will have meetings in the future. So thank you, and we'll set up for the public hearing portion of it.
Thought we had till 7. Didn't we have till 7? 6 to 7? No?
Yeah, they have to set up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to take a little break and
Let's try.
let's get that set up. Comments?
I wanted Shanti to say something. Shanti.
We would drive for 5 hours. The next time
I blanketed it.
You still have a card?
No, I might have to talk no more, but but if I get a chance, I'll back cut them out.
Has everybody filled out their cards? And if you have a card, our staff will grab them from you.
Well, I didn't know I was going to
These
start.
are just to show attendance to
What'd you say?
I said, I didn't know I was going to start. I thought I was going to
Oh, good for you.
And if you choose to speak,
I'm glad you're
if you didn't put anything on your card, if you wanted to speak, you'll still get a chance if what you wanted to say wasn't said, so don't worry about that.
Be happy.
Okay. Here we go. Ready? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nancy Kincannon, and I am the district representative in the Water Resources Division of the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, which is the DEQ. I will be serving as the hearings officer for this public hearing on DEQ file number 1261-0055-P. And with me tonight are other Water Resource Division staff that will be assisting in the hearing. And that is Luis Saldivia, and he's the Grand Rapids District Water Resources Division Supervisor. And also Mike Worm, he's our Grand Rapids District Assistant District Supervisor. So those two are from our division here tonight. To describe how this is going to work tonight, I will begin with some background information about why we are here tonight. I will then describe the purpose of the hearing and how your comments will be used. Following that, I will outline the procedures under which we will take your comments and then describe what will happen after tonight's hearing. It will then be time for you to provide comments, and we will spend the majority of time tonight listening to those comments. At the end of the hearing, I will provide a short summary in closing. If time allows, after the end of the hearing, staff will be available to informally answer questions and discuss the project with you. And we will close that out. It will not be recorded. By way of background information, the Water Resources Division is responsible for administering a variety of programs that help protect inland lakes and streams, wetlands, floodplains, sand dunes, and the Great Lakes. These programs regulate certain activities such as dredging or filling a lake, stream, or wetland, constructing a dam, constructing a marina, placing shore protection or construction docks, and building in a designated critical dune area, wetland, or floodplain. The law governing these responsibilities is the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, 1994, Part 451, as amended. We are here tonight because Melching has proposed the following. Application for permit 1261-0055-P under Part 301 Inland Lakes and Streams of the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, 1994, Part 451, as amended. The applicant proposes to construct loading platforms in a ship basin off Muskegon Lake to facilitate safe commercial operations at 2400 Lakeshore Drive.
A 40-foot long by 60-foot wide platform will be installed on each side of the ship basin dock. The platforms will be supported upland by steel sheet piling installed above the ordinary high water mark, and on 16 bearing piles installed in the ship basin. No dredging is proposed with this project. The project is located in Town 10 North, Range 17 West, Section 34, City of Muskegon, in Muskegon County. In order for a permit to be granted, the DEQ must find that the proposed activities described in the public notice meet certain criteria set forth by Part 301 Inland Lakes and Streams of Act 451. In general, we must consider the effect of the proposed project on the inland lake when reviewing an application for permit under the provisions of Part 301 Inland Lakes and Streams of Act 451. The DEQ is charged in making the following considerations. Section 30106 of Part 301 requires that 1. The department shall issue a permit if it finds that the structure or project will not adversely affect the public trust or riparian rights. 2. The department shall not grant a permit if the proposed project or structure will unlawfully impair or destroy any of the waters or other natural resources of the state. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to give anyone interested in the mulching proposal an opportunity to provide information that the DEQ can use in making the decision whether or not to issue a permit. Please recognize that the DEQ can only use the information you provide if it relates to the criteria that the DEQ must use in making a decision. Some of you may simply want to express your support or opposition to the project. We will be happy to make note of your position, but please understand that DEQ is by law not allowed to base their decision on whether or not there is widespread support or opposition of the project. In just a moment, I will outline the procedures we will use for taking your comments. But before I do so, I need to mention that the notice of hearing was published in the Muskegon Chronicle on Wednesday, September 19, 2012. As you came in this evening, you were given the opportunity to fill out a public comment card. We request that everyone fill out a card and indicate if you wish to make a comment during the hearing. We will use these cards to maintain a record of people interested in the proposed project and to call upon those who would like to speak tonight. To ensure that the hearing is conducted in a fair manner, we will follow these steps. First, the applicant and or his consultant, which tonight Phil Johnson is here to represent mulching, will have an opportunity to describe the proposed project. 2, we will then call on those who have indicated on the public comment cards that they would like to speak in the general order in which the cards were received. When all the cards have been completed, I will ask if anyone else would like to make a statement. When your name is called, please come up to the microphone, face me. If you're not comfortable with that, face the crowd. We don't really care where you face. If you have written comments, please give them, just bring them up and hand them to me if you have written comments too. Please state your name, and then any group or association that you may represent also would be important for us to take note of. Each person will be given 3 minutes to make their comments. I will indicate, or one of us will indicate when you have about 30 seconds left. Please begin wrapping up your comments and end in the allotted time. If need be, I will indicate when your time is ended. I ask that we all be courteous and respectful to one another tonight. Only one person should be speaking at a time. Please do not interrupt the speaker, and please also recognize that the DEQ staff is here tonight to provide a fair opportunity for you to express your comments on the proposed project and to listen to those comments. The hearing will be recorded, and your comments will be part of the information the DEQ will consider in making its decision and whether or not to issue a permit on the proposed project. The public comment period for the public hearing is open for 10 days, starting today and ending October 10, 2012. Additional information and comments submitted in writing during the 10-day public comment period will also be considered in the DEQ's decision. Additional information and comments may be submitted to me, Nancy Buchanan, at DEQ, Water Resources Division, Grand Rapids District Office, 350 Ottawa Avenue Northwest, Grand Rapids, 49503. And I have a whole box of my cards, so don't worry if you forget that. Just come up and get a card at the end of the hearing. Following the closing of the public comment period, the DEQ will make a decision to either issue a permit for the project as proposed, or with modifications, or send a letter of denial. You may find out what the decision is by checking the DEQ website at www.michigan.gov/DEQ. Click on permits, then scroll down to permit tracking and click on the coastal and inland lakes water permit information system. Thank you for your attention. I will now ask the applicant to briefly describe the proposed project, and then I will begin calling the names of those who have indicated that they would like to make statements. Okay, Phil?
Thank you, Nancy. I know that's not going to fit there, so we'll just kind of set it like this. There's another one down there. My name's Phil Johnson. I'm with Resource Planning and Design. I'm a natural resource consultant, environmental planner. My role more is for the future. I was here earlier listening to all the comments, very good comments, and hopefully as we move forward, this site will become all that we hope it will be. For those who read comments in the newspaper yesterday, those largely I've made, and I certainly hope, and so is Melching, that we are able to move in that direction. This evening's public hearing is, now it's, we got,
Put it right in front of me.
move the podium. Since it's being recorded by the DEQ recorder, I think this will pick me up probably, David. Tonight's public hearing is a request by Melching to install 2 loading platforms, 60 feet wide, 40 feet reaching out into the basin. What you're seeing here on the site plan is the plan view of the existing ship basin where the 2 loading platforms would be placed. Here's a cross-sectional view of the existing profile of the bottom of the ship basin there. Here's a cross-section of how those are going to be constructed. The purpose of them is to facilitate just safe usage of this basin, whether it be for loading scrap metal onto barges or any other future uses that may be approved. No dredging's proposed. All materials that are used are non-polluting. The installation of the piles and the structure, no pollution is anticipated. Nancy gave a great description of the proposed activity that she read initially. I think with that, as far as the activities that are proposed in the basin, we could open it up to questions. Or, I'm sorry, however the department wishes to handle the process.
Yeah, who's running it?
We're going to go and comment.
Gotcha.
And then at the end of the formal hearing, you can close it, and then there can be more questions.
As far as the structures, what wasn't proposed, that was initially contemplated, was a cribbing structure where they would actually put in steel sheet pile, then infill it. What this does, as you can see in the cross section, it sits above the existing water profile and the side slope, sitting on the bearing piles that are part of the permit application request.
Good, thank you, Phil. Okay, here we go. I'm really sorry, I'm terrible at names, but I'm going to try my best. The first person is Willie. Is it German?
Oh, yeah.
Willie.
Okay. Thank you very much. Like, asked the question when the gentleman said he's looking to the future, and that's pretty much where I'm looking at. First of all, I want to say that I'm very concerned about the safety of our water and the citizens in this community. So I feel that safety is definitely first. So my question is, to the future, is there a master plan of what Melching is going to do with this property? And are there any potential prospects right now looking to invest in this property?
Thank you. Okay, the next person is Steve Schiller.
He's going to reverse order.
Yes, good afternoon, good evening.
I've lived on Muskegon Lake my whole life. I'm very aware of what's been poured into that lake since the 60s. I live very close to this site. I'm very concerned. I've watched tug and barge operations before, and when tugs come in, they have a deep prop that stirs up the bottom for a long way. I've even watched tugs before that have been used for actually dredging particular slips out that did not have enough water, and they'll use their prop wash to actually take these sediments and distribute them out farther out in the lake. So I'm a little bit worried about a tug coming in there with a barge, because I'm certain that that will stir up a lot of the toxic sediments that are in that lake. Over the years, I've spent a lot of time in that area, and in the last 2 years, we have seen a huge increase in turtle population in that particular slip right there. There had never been turtles in that area for many, 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 many years. And in the last 2 years, believe it or not, we are starting to get a huge amount of turtles back into that basin right there. And I'm sure you know, as being part of the DEQ, that turtles are a lot of times a good factor to tell you if we have good water quality or not. And I think that this is a good sign that this is maybe coming back right now, and I fear that should this be allowed, that this would destroy the turtle population within that slip. I'm also worried about noise. I'm not sure if noise is part of a permit or not, but living approximately 1.5 miles away from the paper mill right now, or the melching site, and directly on the water actually acts as almost like a speaker, and the reflection of any noise and everything makes a huge amount of noise just a short distance away. A lot of times I can be sitting at my house, people think that they're talking in their normal tone, and they actually are 100 yards away from my house, and I can hear them just like they're talking right next to me. So any types of noise or anything that would be generated from that site during the off hours and everything obviously would be a huge negative thing. Thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you. Okay, next one up is Robert Jennings.
I'm going to turn my back to Mr. Alexander. I know he was taking it. That's true. My name is Robert Jennings, and I'm really concerned about the microphone. First of all, thanks for coming, folks, tonight. I talked with Ms. Dixon there earlier. I wanted her to understand that we're very local, we're very concerned about our community, we're very frustrated, and a few of us are downright angry. The people that spoke about concerns have done that at the City Commission. Noise, particulates, whatnot. We do not trust our City Commission. They have a record here of not being concerned. I am heard tonight that one of our commissioners did come up and say he was concerned about water quality. We don't see that kind of action on our City Commission agenda or the meetings. Okay. We've had a Standard Oil dock on the eastern end, and when those tankers came in, when they were done pumping, the hoses would come down and the water would just be flooded with oil. If these folks out here, like me, losing their hair and gray heads will think back of the greasy, slimy mess that lake was, and as the gentleman remarked earlier, the turtles are coming back. We're seeing all kinds of healthy signs here. Now when ships come in, barges come in, and they're loaded and unloaded, who is going to make sure that that is not a polluting influence back in those waters? Anytime that you have that kind of traffic, you're going to have noise, you're going to have particulates in the air. If they're coming in and cutting up metal, getting it ready to load on barges, there's got to be a noise factor there. A lady who was here tonight complained to the commission about the noise from, she called it shredder, and the mayor said, there's no shredder down there. Well, I don't care if you call it a shredder or a mix master or a butter churn. It is noisy, it affects the community in a negative way, and we need some assurance here that this is not going to be another one of those dirty, polluted messes that will set us back decades in the efforts to clean that lake up. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, next person is Shanty Debbie.
Oh, boy.
Well, as you know, Muskegon Lake is an area of concern. And, you know, it's well known that a significant portion amount of the sites that are areas of concern come directly because there was a paper mill on that site. Now, we know there's 100 years of pollution in those sediments in the lake, what's in the basin. Doesn't make sense to me that you haven't tested that basin if they're going to be wanting to do stuff in that basin. I've seen reports about the sediment that's outside of Muskegon, you know, right outside of that property in the lake, and it does not look like healthy mud. It looks like gelatin, gray gelatin with pieces of mud in it. It doesn't look like it, you know, it's a healthy lake yet. And you know, a lot of this has come from the paper mill. We know that, and so you know, all along this process, we have not had much transparency. We've been asking for this meeting since January.
Yeah.
And we don't have a lot of trust for Doug Melching either because of trying to blow up the smokestack without getting DEQ approval. You know, a smokestack that's had pollutants going on for many, many years. So, you know, we want to trust in what you're doing, and we've been watching the process, and a lot of us are very frustrated. We're glad that you're here. We want to have more time to ask more questions. We know that the right thing to do is a complete evaluation of that property before anything else happens with it. And you know, just hoping that you really are doing due diligence with all this stuff. And to me, so far, it doesn't seem like it because it makes sense. Of course, common sense is not a thing. It makes sense to test that water outside there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Leonard Sand.
My name is Leonard Sand, and I live just to the west of Sappy and the condominiums there. And some of the things I've got questions about the permit itself. Under section 6, it says easements and other permits. It's checked no. And one of the things that's in there is there a conservation easement or other easement or deed restrictions. So is there deed restrictions on that part of the parcel where this is going in? And next, under section 8, adjacent property owners, it says see the attached list where people are notified. The only thing it says on here is Muskegon Country Club. Nobody at Falcons Cove was notified in any of this, other than just from what you picked up out of the paper. The other thing is that one pile that looks like it's out in the lake rather than inside the property line, to the northwest. If you draw a straight line across, even outside of the trees, so we need to pull that back in a few feet, otherwise it's in the lake.
Thank you.
David Nye.
Hello, I'm David Nye. I'm with the Muskegon Concerned Citizens Coalition. I
was hoping I would speak a little bit later once I found out what other people had brought up. But I do want to say that my watchword for most things has always been trust but verify. The contamination that is currently in the lake and the lake bottom, what numbers do we have on that? It's been brought up that there has been some testing done, but it hasn't been published as far as I'm aware. Now, just common sense once again says that 100 years worth of pollution on that lake bottom is going to create an issue if you're going to have, once again, crop wash, as one fellow brought up. Furthermore, I have heard from local property owners on the lake that there are some areas of that lake that rather unusually do not seem to freeze over in the winter near the shoreline of Mr. Melching's property. So if you're going to be driving piles in that area, you may be unearthing decades worth of who knows what, honestly. So I suppose I will leave it at that, except to say, as far as the testing procedures that I've seen outlined so far for the property in general, there seems to be an issue of the ability of the SAPI Corporation to determine what gets tested and what does not. What I'm wondering is, does the DEQ even have any authority to compel Mr. Melching to test on a particular portion or parcel of that site, or is it all subject to SAPI's approval? I've seen a lot of dancing around that, but I haven't seen any direct answers. Does the DEQ have the ability to compel testing on any given site, and what are the criteria that are being used in order to determine what tests are done and where? Honestly, I have seen a lot from Mr. Melching that I would like to bring up that his interests are that nothing be found. There was some talk earlier about what is in Melching's interests. What is in Melching's interest, considering that he has accepted full responsibility for all the contamination on that property by purchasing it without conducting a baseline environmental assessment. He has legally assumed responsibility for any contamination that may be found. Therefore, it is in his business interests that no contamination be found by whatever means necessary. Now, I'm not accusing him of falsifying anything, but I'm saying that there has to be stringent oversight of any testing that is done in order to, as many investors in small junior precious metal mining companies have found out to their chagrin, it is an easy matter to falsify geological data, geological testing. And it requires a large amount of knowledge and a large amount of attention to detect any such deception. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Anway?
Anway?
Anway? Okay.
My name is Bill Anway. I'm a citizen in the community in Herbertown. And I just want to express my concerns. One thing that was surprising to me tonight in the earlier discussion was that really no testing of the sediment area really has been done, when probably everyone in the room recognizes there has been pollution in that area. And when we are driving pilings into that location, that's certainly going to disturb the sediment, and there's certainly going to be some distribution of the pollutants in that area into the lake and into the soil. Appropriately so, wells have been driven more into the demolition area of the structures, but I am very surprised that the DEQ has not really examined that area to be able to monitor it and determine any spiking that might be caused by the construction of these pilings. Although this isn't for the DEQ, it's more for the vision of community of Muskegon. We have a very valuable asset here in Muskegon Lake. I grew up in Grand Rapids. I lived in Grand Haven for 10 years. I lived in Lansing. And I think Muskegon has a unique opportunity to build upon this lake an area that's going to attract people to the community rather than building a dock which is going to maybe possibly be a place where it's going to be a rendering location for scrap metal, especially if it's being brought in from other sites other than what's located here. That certainly is not a vision, I think, that we want for Muskegon. I know the area in Holland, as I have friends in Holland, of the rendering plant there. That is not perceived very favorably in that area, but that's been there a long time. I just think we have an opportunity at this point to really have a vision for Muskegon that's going to really build towards the future that people are going to be wanting to move to Muskegon rather than. Thank you for the opportunity.
Richard Wayne?
Wayne.
Okay.
We have here, probably in a lifetime, an opportunity to stop this and create what was existing. Lake was coming back to its normals, and we were very, very pleased with its success. And out comes this. I just cannot believe we're to this point of beg to stop or deter this type of progress. I really do. I just shocked me that it's there. I'm confused on one thing. Are they going to build this dock strictly for what's on the property now, or are they going to accept scrap material? Does anybody know?
Mr. we can't answer questions during that period.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I will try and answer your questions after.
I'm going to assume that they are going to invest in the scrapyard. I think that's the common thing that's being talked about now. And common scrapyards are going to require to have selling ponds or cleansing ponds, whatever they call it. And if you ever want to smell anything that smells bad, smell a cleansing pond. It will make Sappy South look like a rose garden. It's just that bad. And it will carry right across the water. Those are basically my two things. I'm very concerned about the selling the building of selling ponds. And going that forward, there is no way that this can be monitored all the time. Thank you for your time.
Okay, James.
Brutus. You're close. Brutus.
I'll pull your whole camera for me. Yeah, thanks.
Jim Brutus. Thanks. In the earlier meeting you held with the community, I brought up the issue of dust control, and with the proposal here, unless there's an awful lot of paving going on in this facility, if they're going to be trucking stuff in, the dust is going to be a huge issue. There are like 8 marinas on the south side of Muskegon Lake, high-quality marinas, and any dust that gets on sailboats or boats can have a detrimental effect on a whole lot of livelihoods here in Muskegon. Yeah, this is the other comment I would make. When this site was, when the sale was first announced, I think the community really got upset when Sappy stated that there would be no residential, no commercial, it had to be used for industrial. And now here, quite a few months later, there are some ongoing discussions, and the property is not as polluted as they thought, that there are going to be some opportunities for other than possibly. That's what was in the newspaper. So I would just like to have the DEQ do whatever they can to ensure that the site is cleaned up or found not to be polluted, that they really push the present owner to do a whole lot more than just have a scrap processing piece of property. It has this piece of property will impact everybody in Muskegon, my grandchildren, my children, and their children for many, many years. So this is a big decision, and we hope you take all that in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia Price.
I'm Cynthia Price, the president of the Muskegon Sabre Shoreline, although I'm not necessarily designated. Based on that, there are a number of our board members present, so I think it probably is the sentiment of Muskegon Sabre Shoreline. However, I am not going to take very much time because people have already said that the thing that is of utmost concern to me in terms of the permit, which is that the methodology, I'm hoping that the DEQ makes sure that the methodology is not going to disrupt potentially contaminated sediments. And also I'm hoping that the DEQ makes sure that they've characterized those sediments before they allow any work to go on. Thank you.
Okay. Donna, is it Secor Pennington?
And thank you for the opportunity to provide some testimony this evening on an issue that is so important to the future of my community. I'm a public employee myself and like to think that I try to safeguard the public trust, and I would say that after listening to you tonight, I feel reassured that you are trying to safeguard the public trust in this matter. I live on Muskegon Lake. I join hundreds of other local residents who bike and walk and run on the Lakeshore Trail. I paddle my kayak around the Muskegon Lake beach in the channel, and I have a small powerboat that I keep at the Great Lakes Marina. I've listened to sailors tell me that Muskegon Lake is one of the best sailing lakes in the Midwest. Some say even in North America. You may have seen that Yachting Magazine just selected us as the 23rd best yachting town in the United States, even ahead of Newport. I have watched the federal government pour millions and millions of dollars into cleaning up and restoring Muskegon Lake. So now, I'm asking you, the public officials that I trust to represent me and the citizens of West Michigan, to consider very carefully whether you will approve a permit that will facilitate, in my mind, both a short-term and a long-term operation of a large scrap metal processing operation right smack in the middle of the marinas and the bike path and the 23rd best yachting town in the United States. I have been told that it will be better to ship the metal than to truck the metal, but I have witnessed the level of noise that the loading up of cargo ships can create, and I'm not sure it's the noise that my fellow kayakers or bikers or sailors or the folks sleeping in the marina are going to want to hear. And I now understand, though, that noise isn't your department, so I'll have to send those comments back to the people who are in charge of noise. I wonder about the smells and the airborne contaminants that may be stirred up in the lake that we have just spent so much money restoring. I'm kind of curious about where the Grand Valley scientists are who are working so hard on restoring the lake, and wondering if they are offering their input as well. And the suspicious side of me wonders if the Lewis Padnos influence at Grand Valley State is having anything to do with the fact that they don't seem to be there. Years ago, the pulp mill operation sometimes caused a very noxious smell to pervade the Muskegon Lake area. My girlfriend Joni says that her mother would always warn her not to complain about that, because that's the smell of money, Joni. That's the smell of that money on hundreds of workers earning good salaries to support their families. I am hoping that my grandchildren won't be subjected to the noxious noise and smells and fumes and polluted water that could result from this kind of operation, and that I won't have to say to them, that's the sum of millions of dollars being made by scrap metal dealers who were assisted by our public officials in doing so, and without creating those hundreds of good paying jobs. So essentially, I am really asking you to safeguard the environmental quality of what is perhaps Muskegon's most valuable resource. Thank you.
Good.
Dan Mills.
It's swollen, man. Thanks.
So just keep going. I got it.
Thanks, yeah. Thanks, Dan Mills. I want to keep it to just one issue here, and even though there's a lot of things I'd like to talk about, but this one issue has to do with, man, I'm going to end up drawing an analogy too, and there's going to be just a little bit of time you're going to wonder, why is he talking about L.A. when you're in here in Muskegon? But when O.J. Simpson got let off, I understand that the reason for that really was that the L.A. Police Department was caught in a lie. And then in the court of law, where standards are pretty high, if somebody's caught lying, they throw out all the testimony. They don't let them participate anymore at all. Okay, now, video speaks a lot louder than talking, and my points that I'm going to make. And so I'm going to send you each of you 2 links to 2 videos early on at the beginning of this year. And I don't want to use the word lie, but Melching and his cronies were caught lying repeatedly over and over and over again. And you don't take my word for it, you can look at the video. When that smokestack was coming down, 3 days hence, everything was clean. All the permits were on order. When the smokestack was not taken down, because some of my friends made calls to the responsible agencies, the story was, well, Melching found some contaminants and some stuff. They saw none of the lie. Melching came in here and presented the demo crew bringing the smokestack down. Never had an accident. They're nothing professional. So you get on the internet and you see the smokestack coming down the wrong way. Wires being ripped off the poles and hitting their own little kids. Lie after lie after lie. The sapping plant is not on a floodplain. This is in a video at Bunker School. So the 2 videos, one of them we're right here with our city attorney, our city officials present in chorus, like in the background chorus, of yay, Melching. And then the other one is at Bunker School when he reached the public with this big plan, with this site development. Now Melching doesn't show up anymore, and it's because, as Mr. Turnquist says, because we gave him such a rough time. Well, what happened was he got caught in so many lies, he doesn't want to come around anymore. And I don't know how it is that you can let him have any participation in testing this site at all when he is such a liar. Thank you.
Roger Nye.
Excuse me. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Roger Nye. I'm here on behalf of the Concerned Citizens Coalition and Occupy Muskegon. My take on this comes from somewhat a different angle. I have a map of the Muskegon Lake shoreline in 1930, and next to it I have the same map with an overlay of the present shoreline. Now, as you see, in 1930 there was a whole lot of water out there. Today, there's a whole lot of land where that water was. Can I show this to the audience, please? Now, a knowledgeable person told me that this is a fairly common situation along the Muskegon Lake waterfront. That slag, concrete, all kinds of other materials, perhaps roofing materials also, were simply dumped in the lake. And eventually dirt was put over them. Now, my informant tells me that apparently the paper companies did get legal title somehow to this newly created land. I'm not sure just how. I'm not a legal historian or a lawyer. Perhaps the law basically told them, help yourself to our lake bottom. Or perhaps they simply took the land and then sued to have title quieted under what's known as adverse possession. In any event, there seems to be a question as to what part of the newly created land is covered. To what part of the newly created land does the Melting Corporation now have title? That is to say, what part of that newly created land did S.D. Warren have title to? And I think that before doing anything in this matter, it's up to you folks at DEQ to investigate and make sure that the Melting Corporation establishes its title to the part of the site in question. This is simply not property that was created by, let's say, the paper companies saying that this was a natural accretion or something like that. So the question is, how do you get title to lake bottom like this? Is this in the public interest? This is basically a reflection of 82 years of corporate greed. And whether it was legal or not, theft. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That is all the cards we have for people to check they would like to talk. Is there anybody else who would like to talk and check? Come on up. Okay.
Hi, I'm Marcia Alexson. I live in Bluffton. I've been very interested in this whole process. I have to agree with this gentleman back here that I think we all started out being quite trusting of Mr. Melton, or at least I did. I thought, you know, somebody's got to tear down that bunch of junk there, and that's going to make a big mess when they do that. I think the problem has become, however, that we're not sure that Mr. Melton is just going to tear down this junk and make his money and be out of there or sell it, or if he is going to continue to want to run a business like that on our shoreline, because it is just too important of a piece of shoreline to be a scrap metal place. It really is.
Hold on one second. We got to switch the tape over. I want to record you, so hold on one second.
Oh, good.
We're kind of old school here.
Yeah, I guess. Cassette tape.
All right. You're back to tiny bit.
I think Mr. Melton could redeem himself a whole lot with a number of us if he would come out and say he's tearing down the Sappy thing. He's not planning to continue to use that very valuable property as a scrapyard. There are other places to put scrapyards besides a piece of property that has a very important place in Muskegon's history and in going forward. I'm asking him to clarify whether he is simply going to take care of the mess that we have there now, or if he plans to have a mess going there now for the next 100 years. Thank you.
My name's Robert Titus, and I own a slip in Harbor Town. But I work construction, and I see a lot of these scrap yards because they have to use a crane once in a while, and that's what we do. So, being a property owner, there's another one, I'm a little concerned about if this scrap yard, or this operation is going to be another one of these scrap yards I see around, that they have a fair amount of pollution themselves. This is a retention pond. Lots of oil, contaminants. I don't want to see the shoreline looking like this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know this board is just, looking at facts and figures. I think more facts and figures need to be found. I think you're going to find some reason, maybe, to not allow this permit. If that would stop this from happening, that would be a good thing for all of us. So just take that into consideration if you would in your decision. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to talk?
I'm Gloria White Gardner, CW Gardner Associates. I'm a consultant and community activist in Muskegon. And also, I chair the Labor and Industry Committee for the Muskegon branch of the NAACP. The national office does have a watchdog group that is monitoring what's going on with SAPI and with the DC Cobb plant. Some of our concerns will have to do with redevelopment of the shoreline and how that redevelopment will affect not only the community but generations to come. And we're also concerned about contaminants and how that affects the population as well. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Bednarik, and I'm very concerned about this permit. And I know that you have very narrow parameters on which you have to operate, but the Inland Lakes and Streams Act does say that you have to consider the public trust, riparian rights, which a lot of people have spoken to tonight, living on the shoreline or in the area, and also further pollution of the lake and the surrounding area. So it would seem to me premature to allow this operation by way of the dockage to start. And the word on the street is that Melching is pursuing other contracts for demolition, and he's proposing using this site as a staging area for disposing of it through marine transport. And some people have said, well, you don't want all of that junk that's on SAPI to go down Lakeshore Drive, but obviously if you're demolishing a building off-site, you're going to have to bring the junk from that site on site, which would be transport probably by trucks. And there are railroad ties, so there are ways of transporting by train. There is also a question whether the zoning as it is now allows for marine transport, because the slip had been used for coal coming onto the site, and since it's an I-2, in our zoning law it only says that you can have you shall have certain kind of operations, marine transport not being one of them. And we asked the City Commission and the Planning Commission to clarify that, and we haven't received an answer yet, so that might be part of a decision in terms of the zoning as well as the public vote. So I just would hope that you would deny this permit and characterize the pollution both in the sediments and on the soil on the site before taking any further action. Thank you.
Please have your card. Karen. Sorry. Thank you so much.
Leah Markowski. I am a city commissioner here in Muskegon. In addition, I am the secretary of the Muskegon Lake Watershed Partnership. So hopefully they agree with what I'm about to say. But I would echo the fact that in the past, this property was in fact Muskegon Lake. And so in my opinion, we are actually dealing with waters of the state. Somewhere back in time, we allowed people to take over that water. And so what I am requesting of the state is that they continue to act in the public trust and take care when decisions are made, so that I am not a microbiologist or a geologist or any other technical scientist. I cannot, in fact, ensure that the tests that you're doing are accurate. I can make my own assumptions and I can review the data, but I don't have that background. So I request that the department take the time to consider that the science that they have is accurate and that they are doing their due diligence. And I have two other quick points to make. One would be that if you feel as a department that you are understaffed in order to in fact serve our public trust, I think that you should continue to petition our state to give you the ability to do your job. Because if we trust in you to do your job, you need the ability to do your job. And I feel that everybody needs to do that in government. Not necessarily to have more government than is necessary, but to be effective at the government that we have. And lastly, if pollution is caused by a specific owner, I think the pollution needs to be continued to be attributed to that owner, and that owner needs to be prosecuted. I believe that pollution of our land is a crime, and that to allow another owner to take on that crime is not something that we allow in any other area. So I really feel that we need to continue to push SAPI to be responsible for this crime, and if melting has taken on the ownership of helping to repair the damage that has been done or to test and to make efforts towards that, that's wonderful, but I don't think that he should be fully held accountable for someone else's crime. Thank you very much.
Yay!
Anybody else? All right. Thank you for your comments and cooperation. We appreciate your interest in the proposed project and that you took the time to be here tonight. As indicated at the beginning of the hearing, you may submit additional written comments until October 10th, 2012. Following the close of the public comment period, we will consider all comments received and make a decision on the proposed project. And the hearing is now closed. Thank you.
Wow.
And we will be available for answer questions and discuss the project.
Thank
I'm not familiar with that.
Been working with you, Keith.
I'm a TV guy, right?
I'm working way out of town.
To do with KDS.
Are you Keith? As soon as you said that. Okay, man, definitely.
I know how it is. So if you get a chance to find out, you have a lot to offer to there too.
You saved my life. Yeah.
You saved my other friend.
Yeah. Catch you later. Thanks a lot.
This is democracy in action. It really is. This goes on.
If this board pays any attention to us, and the city of Muskegon board, they should turn that down.
You would, I would.
I mean, who in hell can say, oh, no, scrap that's better than it, you know? Right. Unless they're lining their pockets. How about that? And if they line their pockets, they ain't gonna be in job. They ain't have a job anymore.
You would think so.
I hope they would do it. Yeah, if they do.
We'll be watching. Okay, glad to do it. Thanks.
Start bringing in more metal? Or would you start bringing in more metal?
Once he gets rid of the metal from the demolition, the property becomes opened up to more investigation.
But in the meantime, he could have already been bringing in more Yeah.
I know, it's not my process to.
Yeah, no, I'm just questioning what
Yes,
else.
he is.
Yeah.
He is bringing some. He has brought some in. It's been limited, but he has brought another one.
And unfortunately, it's something we have no control over. Yes.
Yes, I hope that you consider the habitat around that area when looking at the permit. And with the ships coming in, like Mr. Schiller said, stirring up the bottom all the way over, to the channel and out into the Great Lake. And there's so much habitat in that area. My daughter lives in the middle of the woods out in Norton Shores, and I see so much more animals and birds, everything that she doesn't see out there. And I just hope that you consider the habitat that lives down there, that's trying to live down there. And slowly coming back. It's like Rudderman Creek.
What would be information that would make you consider denying a permit such as is requested? What would be instances that would, information that would help make that decision? Or, of a similar kind of request. Not saying this one specifically, but of a similar request, what kinds of things contribute to a denial decision?
What do you consider when you look at permit?
They can't answer that.
Yeah.
They can't answer
Well, in general.
Maybe you can say talk to what they do to get Bryce and Nancy.
Well, we gave you a pretty good list on the Q&A that we put together. Page 2. It's you have to look at what's in the statute and in the rules that we administer, so we don't make it alone as we go. So we have to really be truth to, and this is just a glimpse of, in particular, under the Inlets and Streams Act, which is the subject of this application. So if you go down the list, if the department, the way it works is this, and under 1, page 2, this is how the statute reads. The department shall issue a permit, so it's an affirmative decision, unless, so it's a high bar to go from a project that, frankly, will have to go through a lot of different aspects to create a significant objection and adverse impact so great that will tell the balance to say, well, this applicant, Mr. Melching or whoever it is, does not deserve a permit, and then we have to come up with a finding of fact in our denial that enumerates all the issues why this permit shall be denied. So that's just the premise. It's how the statute is written. This one in particular, the Inlets and Streams. We can talk a lot about hypotheticals.
But it says, if the proposed project or structure will unlawfully impair or destroy any of the waters or other natural resources of the state, and I assume that's Muskegon Lake bottoms, and we already admit we don't have that information as far as the contaminated sediment or the soil contamination, so how can we know that it won't unlawfully impair or destroy the waters or further pollute the water?
Keep in mind, part of what Nancy and to some degree I will be doing 10 days after, and then within the next 60 days or so, is to listen to all the comments we received tonight, go through the statutory review criteria, we may have to ask some questions of the applicant that we don't have an answer after tonight to clarify some issues. Maybe, if not so much as to the project itself, but the how-to part. Will they be able to do something to minimize, protect, avoid releasing sediment while they're doing construction, for example? I'm just using that as an example. Are there any other methodology or feasible operating alternatives that we need to consider in our process?
But very related to that, can you issue it conditionally? I mean, can you issue the permit conditionally? I know that in, like, for example, with Newton Sand, you issued a conditional permit. So, I mean, under inland lakes and streams, can you say, you know, we issue this permit provided that you safeguard, you know, that you prove to us that your methodology is not going to stir up these sediments?
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, a permit can be issued. Just about 99.99% of the permits we issue, and by the way, for Grand Rapids District, 9 counties, we will do about 800 permits this year. Applications come in, we'll review them, docks, dredging, you name it. We cover a lot of territory, so 99.99% of the permits that are issued have conditions in them. You shall do the project in the following fashion. And so to safeguard, to protect, to minimize, to avoid impacting resources, receiving water.
And then where does that intersect with the U.S. Army Corps? I mean, how do you delineate who gets what?
Okay, good question. Muskegon Lake is what we call a Section 10 waters. It's a navigable body of water. And so there's dual jurisdiction. Melching, it's required to get a permit from the DEQ, and that's why we're here tonight. And melching will be required to obtain authorization from the Corps of Engineers as well. The Corps of Engineers has, and also we do, have a number of nationwide categories for relatively small projects. We call them minor permits category projects. I could not answer, Cynthia, if this one in particular will fit one of those categories under the nationwide list, or we'll have to consider to be a single project in which the Corps will have to issue a public notice.
Yeah, sort of blanket things.
Right.
Question?
A question. What do you do to safeguard and protect the people that live the other side of the street from Sandy? What, do you do any testing there? People have houses there, live there for years. And, you know, they're not part of this. So I would say, I own a house there. I own a house 150 feet from there. My granddaughter lives there. What are you doing to safeguard my granddaughter?
So are you thinking in terms of groundwater?
Well, groundwater samples. I can understand where maybe you don't want to do a whole 110-acre site, and you've got an owner of that site that isn't really specifying where he wants you to check. But what about the rest of the neighbors? You know, and I'm thinking Sappy. That's Sappy's responsibility. You know, they've left there. They possibly polluted the water. As an owner, I want to know what's in that water. Should I keep that house? Should I get my granddaughter out of there? You know, what are you doing to help me out?
Yeah, your granddaughter's probably on. I'm assuming that you're using city water, paying the city bill.
Yeah, that's we said water.
Okay, so there should be no contact with the groundwater. Also, if you're on that side of, if you're on the, give my directions here.
Down the road, right, lined up with the
south
smoke
side
stack.
of Lake
Lined
Shore.
up right with the smokestack, 150
Okay.
feet away from the smokestack.
North
It goes up the hill.
Yeah,
We're-
right, there's the bluff up above, and then it comes down, right. The groundwater would be flowing out to the lake, it wouldn't be flowing in underneath.
What's in the dirt with all the stuff that's spewed out of that chimney over the years? You know, I think you also, you don't just have a 102-acre site. I think you at least have a spot test. Go over to my house. Perfect, I'll pay for it. You go over and do the test and send me the report back, I'll pay for it.
Well, I need to.
You know, there's a lot of neighbors around here the same thing, and I think you're focusing on a 102-acre site, and you're ignoring the water. What about the walleyes I catch right out in front of Sappy out there? You know, what condition are they in? I don't know what the hell they got in them. I'm serious. And I'm retired, that's all I do is fish.
Well, the DNR does take care of that part of it.
Well,
warnings.
yeah, but if there's toxins that are leaking into that lake that are getting into the fish, lead levels, PCBs, mercury, all that stuff, and it's coming from that site, I think you guys owe it to me to check the water line on the end there. I think you owe it to the neighbors on the other side
And
of the
that's
street.
what they are doing that. The remediation division is doing that. They are requiring the testing along the lake shore.
Yeah, but when is that going to occur? Because to me, that's a prime thing. You know
that has happened.
Yes, there
That's
are
happened.
some monitoring wells along what I said earlier is the groundwater surface water interface. And that's, as close to the lake as you can get, but still haven't put a well in. And at that point, the information that I've seen from May and the July report shows that there isn't any mercury.
Okay.
There isn't, it's showing very little.
What about sampling the other side of Lake Shore?
On the other side of the,
It's talking about the other side
of the street.
The other side of the street.
They do have wells that they've been sampling that are inland a little bit more also, and those aren't showing anything either.
But I'm thinking more along the lines of the soil.
Review, so yeah, I do have a new report that I do have to review that just came in, as I said last.
Is there a place that he could take his fish to see if there's anything?
If his concerns, he could contact the DNR because they do test the fish for toxins. So if you have questions, do contact your DNR rep in the Muskegon area.
Does the DNR have any effect on your finding?
You do check with the DNR. Yes. They do take comment, ask for feedback from the DNR on those comments.
Can we work together?
Yes. Yep. Any other questions? Yes. Yes, you go first. My mind has been wandering.
Well, speaking of the DNR, do you know if has the Little River Band of Indians been contacted or contacted you in any way about this being fishing waters, and would that have anything to do with protecting this area? And also, what we don't understand is that area, the basin, the ship basin there. It's free and open and clear, and you can get in there and you can test. It just does not make sense to us that water, the sediment in that shipping basin, would not be tested before you'd allow any sort of construction in there. You're saying, well, it'll be 2 years before we can get to the ground and start testing it. Well, that's already there. It's open. It's ready to test. You can test. We just have a hard time wrapping our head around. Why wouldn't that be tested first? Because that's what makes sense. How can you know if it's going to hurt anything if you don't know what's there? You cannot get that permit if you don't know what's there. Because you don't know what kind of risk you're putting. The fish, the turtles that are coming back, the people. So. And another thing, there's a $10 million national NOAA. NOAA has a $10 million grant to clean up the habitat, restore the habitat on the southern end of the lake. How is what Melchie wants to do so quickly? How would it affect that? Okay, go back to the other question.
You have a response to the question, I have a follow-up. I don't know if you
Yeah.
Well, just quickly, and you can look at the representation of the project.
Yeah.
They're going to drive pilings, 16 on each side, I believe, to support the platform. There's not a requirement for driving pilings to do any type of testing. So let me repeat, there's no dredging involved. Driving a pile on the bottom run of a lake does not constitute dredging.
Well, you know it's going to pluck up that sediment.
Let me finish.
Okay.
The testing requirement kicks in under the the scheme that we work with. If there's and I think I explained this earlier, if for some reason Melching were to propose some dredging here in this canal out in front of the lake, then a dredging protocol, a sediment sampling protocol under the statute that we administer. So I cannot be jumping onto what David is doing on the rest of the property to make Melching do some testing under this permit. Does that make sense?
Yes, although he did request a permit for dredging in March, and he possibly withdrew that because he knew there was going to be testing. You know, I don't know. I can't guess that. But
right.
But knowing from the very beginning that Melching is willing to do it without the permission.
Right.
That's his modus operandi that we've seen from the beginning.
Right. But that's conjecture. We hear because he applied for a permit. Well, we hear because he applied for... Yeah, I know.
The DEQ was the proof. You were the proof. You were the guys who gave us the smoking gun of Melching.
I'm just trying to focus on why we're here tonight and to answer the question. So driving pilings, by its own nature, does not constitute dredging. Under this process that we have here to process this application for permit.
Can you do it anyway?
Yeah,
No,
I mean, he
can't.
could just get the permits and
can't.
do whatever he needs to without anyone knowing.
If he were to come in for a dredging project, maybe like what he tried to do in March or in the future, that would be a whole different process. We'll go through that. If dredging is involved, we'll go through a procedure. He has to sediment testing. He will do it. We'll review chain of custody, same process that we have for the land portions. We'll look at that, we'll look at what's in the sediments, and then we'll look at disposal options. It will not necessarily mean he cannot do the project. It will more than likely means you have to take these sediments, if they're contaminated, and then take them over here to either a landfill, to a confined disposal facility. That's how it works.
And so it has, in conjunction with the DNR, has the co-manager through the Little River Band of Indians who manages waters from Grand River to Escanaba, have they contacted you at all about this project?
Have you received?
No.
Another question in the back?
Yeah.
You said a few minutes ago maybe that he's bringing in some scrap metal now from all along the river, and he already got some there. How is he getting rid of it? I mean, because then it's just going to keep building up, and he can say, well,
Building a stack
He's
pile.
bringing it into
Building a
process.
stack pile, waiting for the ship to come in.
He's bringing it.
That's what I mean. How can he do that?
You know, he's bringing it in and taking it out. He's bringing it in to process it, so he's bringing it in and cutting it, taking it back out. Right now, that's what he's doing.
By truck.
By truck.
Taking it out where?
To sell it, I'm sure.
Good market. Market to be reused. It's recycling.
Yeah, because you get more money for scrap if you have it in small pieces. The more you process it, the more money you get for it. So he's going to take advantage of the shearers and stuff that he has at that site and torches.
And that's why they are, proposing the shipping, because it will speed up the rate of removing that material.
The other demolitions there.
While they're at the lake.
Any other questions?
You're already in here.
Yes.
This is my last one.
Okay.
I know this is one longer. Could you, just for an average citizen, could you describe the chain of custody? Is the first link in the chain trustworthy? Is it Melching's people at the first link in the chain? Who is witnessing this sampling? Is it some of your folks or is it some of Melching's folks? Because, frankly, if they're the first link in the chain and then they're telling you folks, then that's hard. I'm a little skeptical there.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
I'd like to think that there's a third party watching out for the community who witnesses the first chain in that chain of custody, if you follow my meaning. Is that how that works? Or?
I can speak on the sediment testing piece.
Sure.
David, I'm not sure, I think the land is almost about the same, but typically, Melching is not involved. he hires a third party, soils and materials testing, Inc., somebody. There's companies out there that that's what all they do. They will do the chain of custody. Obviously, mulching is ordering the testing. The company has a strict protocol that adheres to some requirements that we have in state law, I believe, and the company is not mulching the third parties, putting the name on the line if there were to be any, abnormal behavior. They're signing, seal, submit the results to us. We'll look at it. We have issues, questions. We go to the company to ascertain what they found. If some additional testing is required, we'll ask them to do some additional testing. That's typically how it works. There's penalties in law. It's called uttering and publishing, and some other criminal charges that can be brought upon someone that falsifies a report that is submitted to a government agency. Right? Thank you.
I'd like to compliment the panel for your patience tonight.
Yeah.
And
yes, thank you.
also, I think the citizens conducted themselves quite well tonight also. Both sides.
And thank you for staying extra too. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being here and having the concern.